Okay, well, we've got a couple of things to do before we do some driving. Just a very quick checklist. And normally
Oh,
this is for people. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can.
Sorry. Normally this is for people who are reasonably new to iRacing, but I do this to everyone just so that I know for sure that everything is set correctly and
Oh,
that we. Sorry, do I keep cutting out or something?
no, not at all.
Oh, sorry. You just said ooh, so I thought that was I thought
Ah,
you'd
I
lost
said
me.
cool. Can
Oh,
you hear me
cool.
clearly?
Yeah, okay. I must have only been hearing the second half of the word cool. That's why. Yeah, I can hear you fine. So, what I need to do is to get you to share your screen, if possible, when you're loaded into the session. Have you found the session? That's the first thing.
I've only just loaded iRacing so far.
Okay, no problem. Have you used league sessions before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's all right. I've got the process on my screen now, so you can see what you need to do. But you basically just go to My Leagues, and then click on Get Faster Faster.
Leagues, my leagues. Yep.
And then you hit the sessions at the top, and your session is the only one that's live. And then you should just be able to click on that and enter.
Um, can you see my screen? Ah, hang on. Nah, there we are. Discord screen sharing notification was right over the session button.
All right, no worries.
Right, view session.
Let me watch yours. There we go. Cool. Right, I can see your screen now. And yep, you should just be able to enter that session.
Cool.
And that
Going
is the
through
process.
now.
It should make it quite easy. It just means there's no passwords. It means we've got full control of the session. No one else will join. Yeah, so it's just a little bit nicer than
Cool.
doing it any other way.
Right, while that loads, give me 5 seconds. Right, I just had to turn the heater off because otherwise I'll overload this circuit when my PC launches
Okay,
iRacing.
fair enough. So on your screen sharing on Discord, are you on an
Yes,
ultra wide or are you on a set of triples?
I'm on triple 1440p's.
Are you able to just share the center screen instead of all of
Yep.
the three? So I only found out I could do this recently, but I think. Do you know how to do that on Discord?
Right.
So I just
Let me.
figured it out on mine. So where you go share screen.
Yep.
Let me just find it on here. So when you click share your screen, you've got a choice. There's like 3 tabs: applications, screens, or capture devices. And if you hit the middle one that says screens, that then gives you the option to share on any of the 3 screens. If that makes
Ah,
sense.
right. Now I've got NVIDIA Surround and it's not offering me that.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I've
But I
seen that.
can choose iRacing Simulator.
Yeah, that
Let me
that
see if that just does the middle.
yeah, that might be fine.
Might not.
Yeah, that's a good point because I'm using a capture card. My 3 screens are done separately, so that's probably why it gave me the option. But it doesn't matter if not. I'm not going to be watching you through Discord. It's purely for this initial setup bit, just so I can see what you can see. But
Okay.
it's not a problem. We can leave it on this triples as it is right now. Okay, so let's do this little checklist first of all. So I know you've got Garage 61 installed because I've already seen your data, so we can tick that off the list.
Cool.
And I assume that's just running in the background all the time because it always generally is.
It is.
Cool. Right. So next thing then are your graphics settings, and it looks to me from what I can see, everything looks really nice anyway. But if we just go to options, I'm going to open mine as well so I can mirror it. So if you just go in your options there. Is that working? Can you see?
Oh, I'm looking at my iRacing screen. So yeah, I can see your screenshot.
So if you just head to options right now,
Yep.
I just want to check this section here, a driver's view on yours. So at the moment
Okay.
it's on yours, I'm just seeing Daytona
There you are.
banking at the moment.
So are you able to scroll around that window?
Oh, maybe it's just loading.
I think it's just
It
showing you
might
the
have
left or the
frozen.
right edge.
I'm not seeing anything. It's
I
I've just
can
got a
read it or
grey screen.
screenshot it for you if either of those will help.
Are you able to share it like it was being shared a moment ago, where I could see the full thing? I've just got nothing
Yep.
at the moment. I can't see anything at the moment. It's just a grey screen.
Stop streaming. Entire screen.
Here we go. Right, watch stream. Right, okay, cool. I've got it back again. Okay, so let's just have a little look at some of these things. So I don't really mind. I don't really care about field of view or height. You can sort that out yourself. It's just these. Okay, so I can see straight away we've got neck motion on 180%, which is interesting. So I'd like to see that when we're out on track, but ordinarily I'd want the bottom two options on the driver's view to be 0%.
Okay.
And then the next two to be 100%, like you have, and the other three exactly as you have them. The only one there that is of interest to me really is the neck motion on 180%. So this might not be a thing you've ever even noticed, because it might have always been set like this.
Yep.
But I'm pretty sure if I put that neck motion up to 180% on mine,
It says 100 on my screen, I think.
Oh, does it? Sorry. Okay, it's just because of the it's 'cause that makes a lot
Yeah.
more sense. It's just because of the resolution I'm looking at. It's a bit pixelated and it really looks like an 8. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, if you set that to 0%,
Yep.
if this now feels strange when we do some driving, we'll put it back
Yep.
and look at what the difference is. But
Okay.
basically, neck motion means that your on-screen car will be moving relative to your monitors, which is a little bit like in real life your seat being unbolted. So when you brake, you move closer to the dashboard and further away, if that makes sense. So what we're trying to achieve by putting that to 0 is your on-screen cockpit is effectively locked to your real life cockpit. So your dashboard on the screen isn't bobbing up and down or moving around. It's fixed because you're sitting in a fixed car, effectively.
I'm with you.
Like you're strapped in securely.
Cool.
You might not notice a difference, or you might immediately go, "Oh, this feels weird," because you might be used to this kind of weird, slight G-force effect. But anyway, I think that's it for that one. Let me go to the next thing on the checklist. Normally, if someone's got that on, they've also got a few other things wrong, but the other things on yours were all fine. Okay, so I guess the next thing is pedal pressure check. So you're on the correct screen. Just press the brake pedal as hard as you would if you were in a heavy braking zone. Okay, so I'm just checking what pedals you've... Oh, you can just tell me. I've got all of your details.
SimLab XP ones.
Okay, and I assume that is a load cell.
It is.
Okay.
If you think I need to adjust them, they are highly adjustable, so I can change pressures on any of them.
So obviously I'm not looking at your foot, but I'm looking at how easily that red line went up. And just do that again for me. Just like, so it looks like that looks to me quite soft. That looks to me like you're able to press that and get it to maximum without a massive amount of effort.
To get to maximum, the back of my seat is flexing.
Okay.
So I'm not going to hit maximum accidentally. It has to be very deliberate.
Okay, that's fine.
That is about where I get to before the seat starts shifting about.
Okay, we'll leave this for the moment because I don't just want to change a bunch of stuff before we start, but this is just good information for me. By comparison, for me I can see how quickly your red bar is getting up to the top there. For me to do a similar thing, it's much more. I can't do it as quickly, if that makes sense. It's
okay.
There's more of a ramp up in the difficulty of pressing the pedal. But anyway, that's not an issue right now. That's just something for me to know if there's a braking thing we need to look at. That's a potential option for making it easier. Okay, next thing. We've done head movement, we've done pedal pressure. Steering degrees. This sounds really obvious, but if you could just go back to that's it, and just turn the wheel 90 degrees. I know, like, you've almost certainly done this before and you know what you're doing, But I have found
Yeah.
people who, when I've told them to do that, that little steering wheel has spun round twice. So, but yeah, you're fine.
No,
with that.
that's just 90 degrees there.
And this is more just a question for you. You're happy with the weight of the steering in terms of the amount of feel that you're getting? You can differentiate
I think
between
this is
loss of grip.
okay. It will go up to, I think, 18 newton meters. So if
Okay,
you
cool.
think it needs to go up stronger, then that's fine. I found it too weak below this.
Yeah, this is more
but
of a
yeah.
preference thing, to be honest. This is more of a, I just want to make sure it's a thing that, not necessarily just you, anyone I speak to. I just want to make sure it's a thing that has been considered, because a lot of people will
Yeah.
just run it however it is. And
I found this was enough. I mostly drive F3, and this was
Yeah.
enough to help me control slides and stuff.
okay, good.
Less than this, I wasn't necessarily getting enough feeling to catch him.
That's fine. Yeah, you want it to be easy enough to turn that you can do it as quickly as you need to, but heavy enough that you can feel all of the stuff that you need to feel. Like you just know
Yes.
what information you're being told, and when the rear breaks away, you need it to feel immediately like a crisp edge, like you know the rear has immediately broken away and there's no delay. But you've already thought about that. And the last thing on my list here, this is a nice easy one. Just we need to make sure the correct setup is loaded for this session. So this is not a fixed setup session. So we could effectively tweak setups during the session if we wanted, but my setup I've got on here is just Daytona. I think it's just the iRacing default for this car. I'm just on Daytona.sto. Have you got a different one that you've been using or you'd rather use?
No, I've literally to practice just loaded an iRacing default session and driven the car. Nothing fancy.
Okay, so I can't quite read what your setup says.
I've just loaded a setup identical to Daytona.sto, so we should be on the same one.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So that's all the initial rubbish out of the way. So all I want you to do now is basically go out of the pits and go and drive 5 laps, and I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, try not to distract you. I'm not watching you on your screen share, although it is nice to be able to see that, see how things are laid out. And I'm just going to mute myself and just watch basically in iRacing. And then once you've done 5 laps, so we'll do 5 flying laps, so you've got 5 lap times on the board. Don't worry if you get off tracks or whatever, it doesn't matter for this first one. This is just because I want to see how you're driving the car and get you warmed up basically. So I'm going to shut up and just watch you on board.
Okay. This is my first lap this morning, so apologies if it's dross.
That's absolutely fine.
Like that.
Obviously, if the car's broken, you might want to go back. I haven't set this as a no damage session, so you probably want to start from the pits.
Yeah, I've just restarted.
I try not to. We could always do sessions where damage is off, but I like to know if there are curbs and things that are actually breaking the car.
No, that's fine. I always practice with damage on.
guy behind has just done a 145.3. The guy behind has just done a 135.8. The guy behind has just done a 135.3.
And do you want me to put this one in as well?
Yeah, go on then. Just because we had one that wasn't perfectly representative. Sorry, I didn't realise I'd muted myself. I was talking. I was saying, yes, go on then. Since we had one that wasn't perfectly representative. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you. I just didn't want you to hear me breathing whilst you were trying to drive.
No problem at all.
So that's alright. If that gave you a slowdown, you just finish the lap and then we can just exit back to the pits.
Oh.
So that one looked like pretty decent effort until a slowdown there. It's one of the most annoying things when you're observing someone on iRacing like this is that the things I can't see are obviously your live delta, unless I was watching your screen share. I can't see live what you can see, but you get a bit of a feel. It's like, oh, that was decent until that. Okay, so how did it feel? Start off with.
It felt all right. I'm a bit slow compared to my practice the other day, but I did probably get, I don't know, 12 laps in before I got to the 134s.
Yeah, and we don't know if the conditions are exactly the same or whatever. I've just loaded what I think are some pretty average Daytona conditions. So we got quite a high track temperature with 42 degrees. We just got very low.
So the track temp's a bit lower. I think I ended up about 130 the other day on its default.
130?
So I should be quicker.
130 degrees?
Sorry. Fahrenheit, so 50 degrees centigrade.
Okay. So yeah, so this is 42, so it's not too far off that. But yeah, okay, it's not super hot. But I think this is okay as a starting point. If we start knowing exactly what conditions your race is going to be in, we can obviously tailor it to that a bit more.
Yep.
So, in terms of like a general vibe, just watching that, there's clearly nothing you're doing wildly wrong, which is as I expected. I've already looked at your data from before, and you know the kind of times you were doing, you even with lots of practice before you set them, you can't do those kind of times if you're rubbish. So I already knew that to begin with. But already there are certain kind of key traits I can see emerging just from riding on board with those laps that will probably try and nudge you away from in terms of to get the ultimate consistency and slightly quicker lap times. I don't want to go. We could pick apart your laps there and go into each corner and say, oh, you should be doing this differently and you should be braking here and etc. I don't want to do that yet. Firstly, because, as you said, that's already not a completely representative version of what you can do when you're fully warmed up. But also, I'd rather we addressed some more general concepts before we go into the really specifics and tell you to turn in at the cone or, you know, use that piece of grass, etc. So, although I can't bring the data up right now because it takes a few minutes for it to load across, the thing I think was most obvious from watching a couple of those laps was you were actually going into some of the corners a little bit too fast, and then you might be aware of this already, and then costing yourself a bit of time by having to hang on to it, and obviously then the extra distance of running a little bit wide. So let's just, if I just take a random one, I don't know whether you can see my screen at the moment. I'm just gonna.
I can.
I'm gonna just grab a random lap. Let's take your fastest one. Let's be like super fair. And I don't know whether it was on this particular lap. Let me just change the view slightly so we can see what you're heading towards a bit more easily. There we go. Okay, so let's just watch this lap and see if we can spot any areas. So actually, turn one. Okay, although I said I wasn't going to go into specifics, but this is just to highlight the theme. Although we didn't nail the apex here, you didn't actually go into that one crazy fast. Like that, you weren't. That wasn't what I was talking about. When the car went to turn in here, you told it to turn and it turned. You didn't run out here. So this obviously was good. Hopefully that's partly because it's your best lap of the session, so that's what we'd expect. Let's see if there's anywhere else where we're going a bit deep. So that was a slight difference again. This one, you were being very, very careful not to go in too fast. So that's good. So I'm not going to criticise that bit. Let's see whether we did it here. Okay, so this corner, I don't know whether you probably can't hear the audio from my screen share, but you can probably imagine. I can hear the audio, so I can hear your engine revs. And this is almost the opposite to what I just said a minute ago. This trait we're doing into here is you're being so concerned to make sure you're definitely not going too quick in that we're quite under the limit through here. So the reason I'm going quiet is 'cause I'm listening to your engine revs. Yeah, so you're almost like over slowing, but slightly too late in the corner. So we'll look at that more specifically in a moment. I just want to check through the whole lap just to see if there's any other examples. So we'll just skip to the next one. Yeah, so far on this lap, you haven't done any of the stuff I said. And that's probably because it's your best one. And on the ones where the lap time wasn't as good were the ones where we went in too deep. But there were more of those. You know, this was clearly the quickest of the group. So we'll look at some of those other laps and see if there's the common theme there. But this so far, okay, it's not super fast as a lap, but this you're not doing that thing. So that's good.
Okay.
So that says to me that you're not supposed to be going in too quick. Like you're aiming for something a bit more under control, so that's obviously really good. Okay, there's definitely something I'm going to talk to you about in the bus stop, but I'm just going to watch you do it on this lap before I tell you about it.
Okay.
Yeah, this lap you're completely fine. So this was your best lap for a reason. So there's no need looking at the rest of it because it's just a flat out section. So all the things that I was going to pick you up on, you didn't really do on your fastest lap.
Okay.
So, but we did other things which lost us lap time. But I don't want to talk about that yet. That's the fine tuning. I want us to not do the problem things before we fix the speed issues. And obviously, going into a corner too fast is also a speed issue, but it's mainly if you're consistently going in deep or overshooting, that's a bigger issue in terms of a stint time, because it doesn't matter that 1 or 2 laps out of 5 are not doing that. If you're losing 2 seconds each time you go deep in the others, then you're losing more time than you'll gain by doing a better, faster lap once in a while. If that made any sense at all. Right, let's watch this one.
Did.
In fact, yeah, so I'll watch your last 2 laps. Let's see if we did it here. So yeah, definitely on that one. I mean, it's really, really common at Daytona to do that. I did that a few times in my practice. But definitely, you can see we went a bit deep on that one. So that's one. Let's see what happens here. Okay, that wasn't too deep, but there was a point where it was like, oh shit, we're gonna go too deep. In fact, and you can see you knew it was gonna happen, so you started tightening up the steering already. You know, you've already started turning in, like here, when normally you probably go a bit straighter and then turn in a bit later on. But that's kind of natural. When you feel you're going into a corner a bit too quick, you do tend to just start edging the steering in towards the apex early. Let's look at this one. So you hit the apex well. Let's see what it looks like from the cockpit. I'm sorry you can't hear this. This would be much easier if you could actually hear what I can hear. You'll hear it on the recording. So I'm recording this session, and I'll upload it to a private YouTube video. So you can see back everything I saw with the audio as well. But just for the moment, you just have to believe me when I tell you about these revs. Okay, so you actually did really manage to slow that down well. There's probably a slightly faster approach to that corner that would, in terms of lap time, if we do a slightly different line, but you couldn't have done it with that entry speed anyway. And we'll go into that later. But you really did nail the apex nicely there. Let's see this one. And again, nailed the apex. That's fine. Pretty sure I remember what you did in the bus stop here.
I think I cut the exit.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not terrible. I'll mention this now before I forget anyway. We'll go into this more specifically when we're really focusing on perfecting each corner, and I'm like badgering you about them. But a thing I noticed on a few laps was there's a point here in the middle of the bus stop where you obviously want it to not understeer by the time you get to here. And I'm guilty of doing this as well a lot because you don't want to come off the throttle fully because you know there's a fast section coming up. But I could hear you kind of leaning on the gas a little bit here, like holding on, say 30% throttle. It wasn't necessarily on this lap, but I could feel it was about to push you wide. It was like you were fighting against yourself. You didn't want to lift fully because you don't want to reduce your speed at all. But then when you don't lift fully, the car doesn't rotate and you end up going a bit deep just here. So it's almost like it's better to take that slight throttle loss this point, get it pointed at this curb, be super tight at this point, and then you're able to get on the power earlier, not go deep, etc. These are all obvious things. I know you know this stuff. This isn't revolutionary information. It's just sometimes when it's pointed out that it's a thing you might be doing frequently, then we can stamp on it. So let's go to the next lap. So was this the last? Let's just check. Yeah, so this is the last one. The lap time wasn't great, but I think that's just because of the slowdown near the end. So
yeah, I think so.
So definitely. Sorry, go on.
I might also have forgotten to downshift to second for that corner. I think I did it in third.
See if I can hear it. Maybe. Your revs don't sound super low, but I'll just trust you on that one. I can't see what gear you're in. Unless, hang on, is it on the cockpit? Is it on the dash? Can I see it here? Oh, I can't see anything here because I'm too zoomed in. Hang on, I can zoom out a bit. Let's just go out a bit. Oh, not enough apparently. There we go. Does this show me your gear? I think you're right. Yeah, that's third. Yep, you're right. That is what happened there. And that probably didn't help you being super neat into there. Right, let's get rid of this and carry on. So just only a little bit. We're just a little bit deeper than you want there. Not bad at all. I feel like we should have some music on at this point. And again, pretty neat there as well. And here again, definitely hitting the apex. So it felt like this one was like the main one where we did that throttle, like leaning on the throttle. I'm just going to listen. Yeah, and it's pretty. You can see it obviously in the video. You can see that it forces you deep. You can't see what throttle input you've got, but I can hear. So here you've got constant throttle, and then obviously it pushes you wide. There wasn't ever a point where you went, I'm going to go deep, so I need to have a full lift to get the car to just rotate a bit now. We just kind of tried to ride it out, and obviously it didn't work. And one thing I found doing laps at Daytona, when I did the 24 hours this year, I obviously wasn't in this class, but a lot of the technique things are the same. The LMP2s aren't that much slower. And one of the things I found, it was really a case of, in some of the faster corners, like this one, and in fact, like actually the entry to this one as well, not trying to push it, trying to go in a little bit slower really gave you a much bigger benefit. You know, you can try, again, I know this isn't revolutionary information, but because you will have seen it on your Delta loads of times, but if you come in here and you think, yes, I've really nailed that entry in terms of speed, immediately, less than 2 or 3 tenths of a second later, you're thinking, oh shit, I wish I hadn't gone in here quite as quick because you're being pushed wide right here. So it really, really is better to focus on accuracy in here. I mean, and you're pretty accurate there. I mean, your line is good. In this case, it's purely the throttle input that was the problem. If you were off the throttle right now, you would have made this corner. It's just the fact that you're kind of being pushed on. But yeah, accuracy and making sure you hit each of these apexes and are clean on the exit. I think clean is probably a better way of putting it. Not only will it stop you getting all the off tracks and obviously potential penalties later in the stint, but it's just you can hit a more consistent, good rhythm, and it's safe. It's also safer. You can kind of do the same thing over and over and over. you don't have to be on the ragged edge. Now, having said that, there are other parts of the track, if I just rewind back, when we're going to look at finding lap time, because I know obviously that's part of what we want to do, there are some places where we do want to be a bit more, not on the ragged edge, but a little bit more closer to the limit. In this short set of laps I saw you do there, and then I know they're not representative because I know you're kind of just warming up, which is why we're going to do some more in a minute. In the slower corners, I think we're under driving. So provided you make it to the apex and you haven't just gone in too deep, you know, like turn one here, obviously this is a bad example, but because you're coming from such a high speed, it is easy to occasionally just brake a little bit too late or not have enough brake pressure initially enough. So when you get to this point, or not go down to second gear, like you said here, when you get to this point, it pushes you wide. That's a bit different to the thing I'm talking about. It's in the other corners where it is reasonably easy to get it stopped in time, like this one and the following hairpin, that we actually need to be dancing with the limit of front end grip a little bit more. This is where we're going to find most of your time. I'm sure most of your time is going to be the way we approach arriving at the apexes here and the way we drive off of them. So fixing going into a corner like turn one a bit too fast is easy. You know, we'll just make sure you definitely get to second, because you know it helps the rotation, and make sure we don't brake too late. And we'll, if we need to find a marker point, we can do that. But I generally myself go on feel, but that's not a great answer for a lot of people. So we'll find.
Use the yellow sign on the right-hand side.
Okay, so that's good. So yellow sign, and we can either, you know, creep forward a couple of meters if you're easily making the apex, or we can go back a bit if you keep slightly missing it. That's one thing. But then judging exactly how much we're bleeding off the brakes on the approach to the apex, not necessarily in this one, but mainly in the other two slower corners, I think that's where we're going to find quite a bit of time. So I'm going to get you to do another run of laps now. I'm sorry I've been blabbing for ages, so you probably forgot the track and everything. We'll then look at some data after that one and see if any of those areas tally up, and if we can focus in on the key parts where we can gain the most time, if we can take some low-hanging fruit. And we will also see some common traits more clearly in the data. So do exactly the same again. 5 flying laps. And again, I'll just watch and keep quiet. But just bear in on this one. You don't have to change anything based on what I've just said there, because you can't just switch to doing something different.
Yeah.
But basically, if you can make sure in the bus stop we're not hovering on the gas in the middle part where you kind of want it to turn, by all means get back on the gas when you know it's definitely going to make the corner, but take the short-term loss there for the long-term gain. And I know it's easier said than done again, but if you can make sure you're not going too deep into turn one, then we'll work on the other corners, the tight hairpins. There's not that many corners on this track. It's kind of, after this corner, it's like 3 hairpins and a bus stop, isn't it? So if we can get one of them nailed, that same technique is going to be the same in all of them, basically. But just do another 5, and then we'll start looking at some data. I'll just skip to live, so I'm watching you right now. There we go.
If inputs are useful and you watch via my stream, you'll see my.
I can't for whatever reason. No, for whatever reason, all I can see is a grey screen again. It's like doing like a loading screen when I try and watch your screen. I don't know whether. I don't know. I can see my own screen, but when I try and watch yours,
you'll see the traces on the Garage 61 at the end. Anyway,
yes, exactly.
So it's not important.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing me your screen. It says you're live. It's just doing like a loading box.
I can try and reconfigure it for the next session to be single screen.
No problem. But don't stress too much. It's fine.
Yeah, you see, if I try and stay off the gas, it feels like I don't really get any grip to turn back in.
So I can't see exactly like we were just saying. I can't see your input. It sounded like you were on the gas, but I'm just you just carry on. I'm just going to go back and have a really good listen and watch of that section.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, I can talk to you now because I've just seen that you're not up to speed right now, so that's fine. It sounds very much to me like you were still on the throttle, on the onboard view
Okay.
and on the off-board view. We'll have a look at the data, and if I can see your screen in a bit, maybe you can show me a replay on your screen because then I can see the inputs. But let's just carry on for the moment.
Okay.
Might just be the sound of the might just be the way the engine sounds when you're off throttle in this car from an off-board
So
shot.
that time I went in extra slow and I took my foot
Yeah, yeah.
completely away from the gas pedal, which obviously I did make the turn.
Yeah.
But I'll try the same thing, but a little quicker in this time.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna just listen back just to check what the audio sounds like on that. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a misleading audio artifact of just the high revs of this engine. I might have been being a bit unfair to you there, saying you were on when you weren't. But that's okay. It means if it's still not turning like that, it means we need to do some other things, like just brushing the brakes instead.
Okay. I do try and use real world driving experience, but the lack of gravity makes that hard to always connect up. I've never done any track driving, but I do drive fast, normal cars.
So you were much better on the initial curb on that lap. The left-hand entry curb, you use more of it. I always
Okay.
seem to find that helps when you get to the middle part. But you're about 1.5 feet closer to the the maximum curb width use on that lap than the previous one.
So should I be coming out the bus stop in 4th or 5th gear? It seems quicker in 5th, but it feels like it accelerates slower. I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm looking at both of our data from looking at my data from today versus your best lap from the previous run and just seeing what you were doing through there. And I'm 4th. In the middle of the bus stop, I'm 4th.
Was 4th from a previous run.
So it might also be if you're trying to use 5th through there on these runs, that might be why it's trying to push you on a little bit as well. It's not, when you're off the throttle, it's not having as big an effect of kind of dragging you, dragging the nose in a little bit.
Yep.
I basically want you to have a lap from this session that you're happy with is relatively representative. Maybe not of your best possible lap, but just of the way you drive this track in general. You haven't necessarily maximised every corner, but you haven't had any major mistakes that are going to skew the data, basically. So if you need another lap or two,
it's the quickest from my first stint
Okay, yeah.
Because
yeah.
that's probably more representative than the odd 134 in this car track combo.
Yeah, no problem.
F3 I would expect to be a bit quicker, but this isn't what I tend to drive on average.
Yeah, that's fine.
I like my cars light and pointy. There we go. I took 100th off my previous session best.
Yeah, so that looked from the outset like a more like warmed up Phill lap, if you see what I mean. Like that was, I couldn't see the delta, and I didn't know whether it was going to be, massively quicker than what you'd done in the previous laps. But every section of that lap, I thought, yeah, that's decent. Like that's a decent effort. There was nothing on that lap that looked bad or like a mistake. So that's good. I think that'll be really a nice thing for us to use as a comparison, because that to me looked like you driving the track and the car pretty much doing what you wanted it to do. It was, and you being happy with your approach. That's.
Yep.
So I think that's a good representative baseline for you, that one. So once when you've done this one, if you just want to like park up, so that exit the car, so the data starts uploading. We can start off with looking at your best lap from the previous run, but then we can switch to this one once it's uploaded.
That screwed that.
Is that an off track or a slowdown or both?
It was just an off track.
Just an off track.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Okay.
There we are. I
Cool.
exited to
Brilliant.
main screen.
So we'll just let that upload, but whilst that's doing its uploading, I'll bring the data that I'm looking at onto my screen, and hopefully this will be big enough when I zoom in that you'll be able to see what I'm on about, and we can look at some details. So, can you see my screen with this
I can.
data trace? Okay, so this is a lap I did this morning in this same session versus the best lap you just did in that first session. They're not a million miles off of each other.
Okay.
But I think the first thing is to look at this delta bar down here on the bottom, just to focus in on where the biggest time gains are. So anytime, obviously, we have a step, anytime there's a significant step up, we know that there's a chunk of time lost in that section. So, for example, if we look from the start-finish line until the exit of turn 1, there's really not a lot. We're really not looking at a huge time difference here. So, in fact, let me just delete I've got your 34 in here, muddying the water, so let me just I'll just get rid of that one, just so it's not making things look confusing. This lap could not be found? What? Hang on, I've got to find your lap again that you just did earlier. So it was a 35.257, it was this one, wasn't it? There we go. I don't know what this one is, that can be deleted. Right, there we go. Let's just make you red and I'm blue, just so we've got a clear difference. Okay, so yeah, so as I was saying, so start-finish line to the exit of turn 1, there's really negligible difference. When you've done it well, like you did on that particular lap, that's 300ths. And so I don't think we need to focus on turn 1 particularly, aside from making sure you're consistently not running wide. Just that you're consistently tidy, because the way you're driving it, although it's actually a little bit different to me when we dig into this data, certainly on this lap that we're comparing, or these 2 laps, there wasn't a big time gain. So we can kind of put that one aside for the moment. We'll look at that later if we need to find more time. The first big step from basically 0 time difference to 3.5 tenths is that one corner. So the first hairpin, whatever the hell that's called. Is it International Horseshoe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
I could see this from watching the onboard. It's also pretty obvious from looking. Oh, I'm pointing at my screen, thinking that you can see my hand. It's also pretty obvious. I'll use the cursor. It's also pretty obvious when I look at the kind of GPS plot of the different approach in terms of lines we're taking.
Tidier in.
I'm going earlier, but I think probably, I don't know, more gradual and earlier. I'm not doing all my braking and then getting it turned and then driving off. So these cars, because of the way they lock up easily and they feel like tanks for a prototype, like they just don't really want to turn, they do kind of draw you into a technique where you brake really in a straight line, get it turned, and then drive off the corner. Also because they're a bit of a pig on the throttle. But if you can kind of tame it a bit, there is lap time to be found by doing a more traditional, slightly earlier turn in and getting your rotation done over a longer period of time, but taking a shorter distance. So when I look at our braking traces, for example, pretty much, well, certainly this corner, you're braking more heavily than me. So let's just zoom in on this corner in isolation so we can see clearly. You're going quicker when we get to the braking point, and you're braking harder than me. You can see your braking trace, red line, you're like 15% more brake pressure. Yep. And staying on a little bit longer. And I can see on the steering trace down the bottom here, my blue line starts to go down to the bottom, which is turning right, a little bit earlier than yours, which makes sense because you're going deeper and then turning it in more in one go. And then my peak steering happens quite a lot later than yours, whereas you're getting the car turned earlier. You can see your peak steering is kind of over here, like before we get to the apex, and then you're driving off. Now, either of those things could be better in given different situations. If we didn't know what track or car, or we had no comparison, what you're doing here might be the best way. But purely because we've got a lap to compare it against here, it looks to me like there's a time gain to be had from taking a slightly shorter initial distance, making your minimum speed happen later. So you can see your minimum speed is happening at here, which is, you probably can't read this, but 940 meters into the lap. And my minimum speed's happening here at, say, 970. So that's quite a big difference. And you can see on the speed trace, my speed tails off. My deceleration tails off quite a bit earlier. I'm just carrying more speed into the apex, which is where the big time gain happens, really. If you look simultaneously down at the delta bar down here, whilst I'm dragging the cursor over this bit where our lines diverge on the speed trace, that is where the step happens. It's from there to there. And by the time we get to the inside, I've made all the time difference on you from this point to this point. It's really like the early phase. So, okay, it's easy to say that. So how do we change that? So what we're going to do differently on the next one is, on the throttle trace, first of all, I come fully off the throttle when I come off, whereas you've got a little bit more of like a gradual reduction. So you're actually really crossing over the pedals here. If I hold the cursor here, there's a point where you've got 53% throttle when you've also got 20% brake on. So
okay.
So we want to be, at this point, I go from 100% throttle to 0 by here. And at the point I've got 0, you've still got 53, but that's partly because you're going a little bit deeper in anyway. But anyway, by the time I've got 0, that's when my brake starts. So you see, I've got to 0 and actually 7% braking. So there is a very small crossover. If I go back 1 pixel maybe, can I get myself out of jail here? So that's 0. 4%. Okay, so I've got a 4% throttle brake crossover right at the end of the throttle. But I think yours is a pretty significant one, actually. You're on the brakes, whereas you've still got 100% throttle. And And so 80% throttle, still 13% brakes, 60%. So what do we get down to? And this will be contributing to the car trying to push you on a bit deep for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got 26% brake. So by the time you get to your maximum brakes, obviously you are off. You know, you've done it. By the time you've ramped up to full, but there's definitely some potential for more efficient deceleration. We'll check your lap from the second run in a minute to see whether this is common or whether this was just on this lap. I never want to just take one lap as definitely what you always do. It might just have been a weird quirk of this lap. But the big takeaway, I know we've just focused on one corner for ages. The big takeaway is there is time to be had, and a significant chunk of time in this case, from just basically not staying on the brakes as hard for as long. See, I get my initial braking done and then start to bleed off, and I'm just letting the front tyres decelerate the car up to the apex. So there's more of the combination, or the percentage of deceleration that's happening from the brakes themselves and from the turning into the corner and just the general friction of the turn. I've got a bit more of a blend there, whereas you're definitely doing most of the deceleration on the brakes and then turning in. And that actually is what it looks like from riding on board. I haven't looked in the data yet, but that's what it looked like in the other hairpins too. And I imagine it's going to be a similar time gain from the others. So let's just zoom back out, look at the next one, because if that's where we're going to find time, and we just have to change the same thing everywhere, that's brilliant, because it'll make your life easy. So let's look at the next one. So obviously that's a fast corner. So down to this hairpin.
Just so you're aware, it is 11:05. I know you've got other sessions booked. So
yeah, that's fine. Don't worry.
That's fine.
We've got a little bit of a buffer between this one and the next one, so that's fine. And and we had like a 15-minute technical check at the start anyway, so that's always the same with session one. I want to make sure that we don't, miss some of these key things on this first one. So you've got some stuff to practice over the next week. So let's I'll just take this next hairpin. We'll look at these 3 hairpins and then we'll reassess. So this one, let's see if we've got any. So again, we've definitely got brake throttle crossover, quite significant again. So 50% throttle still whilst we're on 22% brakes. And just by comparison, although I'm braking later here, it's 0% and 2%. So that's definitely, although I've got a very, very tiny blend, I don't think it's having an impact, whereas yours will definitely be pushing you on deeper into the corner. So this is a good thing to be aware of. This is why I love the data, because I wouldn't have seen that just from watching on board. It will have looked like you just braked too late, but actually maybe this is contributing some of it. In terms of line, you're again definitely going deeper and then rotating the car and driving off the corner. You can just see how much deeper on this line you're going. If we look at the delta, where is the key time loss? So it's kind of static up to here, and then from here to here. Okay, it's the corner. Okay, that's fair enough. It's the whole corner. But the most of it is from the entry. Most of it is up to the apex. It's the similar point. So it's from here to here. So a lot of this is the distance you've travelled. You are travelling a bit slower. So you have slowed down. You braked a bit earlier than me on this particular lap. We'll check the other one in a moment. So you are from here to here. That time loss is because you've braked earlier. But really, when you look down at the delta line down here, that doesn't really move much from here to here. So the early braking hasn't really affected. The big step is from here to here, which is that short phase of the corner. It's the entry. And the only difference you can see very clearly when you look at this line over on the track map is I've gone in much tighter, and I'm just I'm carrying a bit more speed whilst also being on a shorter line. So the distance is the main thing. And if we went back to the other corner, the one before over here, again I've got a much shorter distance on the way up to the apex, which coupled with going slightly quicker at the same time is a really big time gain. I think the distance is bigger than the speed difference. Yeah. And the tricky part of that is if you just initially copy exactly what I'm saying there, if I just tell you to go in tighter, provided you get rid of the brake throttle overlap, say you've just eradicated that, and you just try and go in a bit tighter and earlier, the car is just going to go horribly deep, because it's not quite as simple as just doing that. You need to make sure that when you're at your minimum speed point, you're really getting the car rotated, because you're doing your rotation in a very different way currently. So, and it's working, but it's not the fastest way, as we can see from the from the Delta here. So this is what we're going to work on next time, is getting this phase of the hairpins, your initial entry phase up to the apex. We're going to just basically fundamentally change the way you're approaching that. It might be horrible to begin with. You might cock it up loads because it's clearly not what you naturally want to do, because otherwise you'd have already been coming to that conclusion. You've gotten used to this car in a way that makes you want to go a bit deeper, get it rotated. And this is why, I was saying to you when we were watching back the replay, I was like, oh no, you are actually making the apex. But you're making the apex later and having already lost the time. And that's what wasn't immediately obvious from the video, is that
I'm with you.
The time loss has already happened by the time we get to the apex. And the fact you've made a nice, neat apex, that's good. They're still better than not making
but misleading.
But it's misleading, exactly, because we've already lost the time. So let's just look at the next hairpin, just so we've kind of looked at all of... This isn't as tight a hairpin, obviously it's got a different exit because it runs onto the banking. But let's just have a look anyway. So the step is here to here, so that's the complete corner. Where's the main? It's actually a little bit on the entry, a little bit on the exit here. Okay, so I think the biggest difference here, you have gone in a bit slower again, but this is the braking phase. And again, when you look at the Delta, the little ball doesn't move very far from here to here. It's from here to here where it really takes like a bigger step. And I think it's the distance again. When you look at the red line on the exit, look how much further you're travelling. Even though on the speed line, we're pretty equivalent. From the apex onwards, we're not much different in terms of speed. If I just pick a random point, 2k, it's really not a lot. But when you look at the distance travelled, you're going way further. And I think that's where the tenths are racking up on the exit there. Obviously, then by the time we get to here, we've converged and our speeds are going to be the same and the lines are the same. But from here all the way to here, you're travelling... In fact, I don't think this graph will show us... No, we can't see distance on here. You can see distance of a fixed line across the track, but you can't see the distance the car has covered, which is a shame.
I'm with you.
But you can just see it. You can clearly see, just from looking at the picture here, the red line is going further, but the blue line is travelling faster. So that means you don't have to go that. You don't have to be going that wide to travel faster. This is the entry to this hairpin you've done a little bit differently to the others, probably because it's more of an open corner. It isn't a normal hairpin, really. It's not a hairpin. It's just a
I think
tight
that one
left-hander.
is all governed by my desire not to lose control when putting the gas down on the exit.
Okay.
Because it's such a skiddy corner.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's probably where all of my mistakes come from, is being hyper-focused on real application of speed.
When we can still have that safety net, because I have the same want, I have the same desire for that safe exit here. We can have that same safety net by having the car pointed straighter here, whereas you've still got quite a lot of lock on at this point. You see, when we look, so let's look down here at the steering trace. I love data. I love this Garage 61 because it really does show you stuff very clearly, and it's a real nice user-friendly application. See the steering lock down here at the bottom? I have a peak steering
you're about
lock.
20% above me, aren't you?
But briefly. And then after that, look at where I've now got no steering lock on, but you've still got quite a lot on. So I'm down to 5%, but I'm trying to be 0. That's just like opposite lock, really. I'm effectively in the centre, whilst you've still got 20 degrees on. And so by trying to have less steering lock on so you can put the power down without losing the rear, you've actually kept the steering lock on at a crucial point where you want to be getting on the power. And then if you look up at the throttle, I'm able to get harder on the throttle up here where the cursor is, because I've got less steering on at that point, or I'm reducing the steering to basically 0. Whereas you're having to wait. You've got like this static period. You've used less overall lock. You've been smoother with the steering, but that's actually hurt you because you haven't got the car rotated here in a fixed point, which is actually different to what you did in the other hairpins. In the other hairpins, you were doing it more similarly to what I'm doing here. So that's unexpected, but I understand your reasons. It's because of the way you're now launching onto a big, long straight. You really, really need to get the power down. You don't want to get it sideways on the exit. But this slight tweak of getting it... Again, this is easier said than done, but at least we know what we need to... Now we know what we're looking for. Slight tweak of, in this corner, getting the rotation done earlier and driving out straighter, you can have your cake and eat it, because you're currently slower on the entry, you're having to hover off the throttle on the exit, and your speed is slightly lower on the exit as well. It's a lot closer on the exit, but you could still be going quicker. So, and you could be safer. So that's obviously that's the extra thing. So the thing you're trying to get to, the safety and smoothness of throttle application here, you can have that and do a quicker corner by tweaking that technique. So before we finish, let's just see if I can find your other lap, and I'll just very quickly look over. So what was the time you did on that other lap? It was it this one?
1:30. My really fast, or not?
The one in the
really
session
fast.
you just did there. It was a 2:43, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Just
my
your
last
best
one, I
lap of
think.
that one. Let's have a look. So can I see a 2:43? I might just have to refresh. It's the one thing with this. I love this software. It does take a bit of time sometimes for the data to arrive, and sometimes I can't find it. So I don't want myself. I just want teammates. You're the only person here who's been doing this track. Was it that one? Did we say 2:4?
Yeah, possibly.
No, it's 2:43. Why can't I see it? Why is it not uploaded? And why is it not showing? Yeah, it's not there. That's annoying. Maybe if I just refresh the whole thing. I wonder if we go into you here and look at your activity, whether it will show up.
It says uploading telemetry on the Garage 61 agent.
Okay, so it must just not be up yet. So that's 2:45, and we're looking for 2:43. Yeah, it's still not the right one. I'll give it another couple of minutes just to see what it'll do. So it is this session. There we go. 2:4. Oh no, it's 2:43 is the one we want.
2:45. Yeah.
That's... Oh no, that must be it. Why is it saying 2:43? Am I just getting confused? Where's the 2:45? I can't see your 2:45. Was it one of
It's
the?
not there. It must be that
was
one.
it one? Was it an off? It wasn't an off-track one, was it? Or maybe it's just. No, it must be that one because you did a 36.5, and then a 35.2. And you did a 36. Yeah, okay, it is that. It's just giving you a different thousandth. Okay, so it was in there. That's fine. So I'll just go back to where I was. Yeah, I don't know why that's showing different. So if I just go here and we'll just add it into here. No, hang on. I don't want everyone that's ever set a lap for this track. There we go. We don't just want best laps. I'm getting slightly better at using this software, but I'm still not the world's best Garage 61 user. Right, okay, so
It is a bit clunky, so don't worry.
So let's just remove the 257 that we were looking at, and we'll just look at this one. Okay, so we won't do a whole lap analysis, but let's just go from... So let's just look if we've got similar steps. So there is a similar step here, and it's this, you can see straight away from the picture. So you are consistently getting the rotation done earlier, driving off the corner, but like losing that little chunk of time there. This time around, you actually did lose more at turn 1, but that's not because you don't know how to do turn 1, because you did it better on the previous lap. So you just obviously didn't nail it on this particular lap. So if we just go back to the full lap... Let's look at this from here. So not as extreme that time, and the time loss wasn't as extreme either. But you are still going a little bit deeper. So we are still slowing down a little bit early, and then a little bit quicker here, but ultimately slightly slower. A little bit more brake pressure. What's happened here to me? Oh, I think I've got a bit sideways. But yeah, that wasn't as bad there. There is still a time. There is still a step for what we 0.697 to 984. So there is still time to be found there, and it is still basically a similar thing. So we'll go deeper into that next time. And then the next one here is definitely the same. It's the distance on the exit. Yeah. But again, you've done it better. So this was a better lap. You just had a much worse turn 1. So this is much closer to like your potential. And this now makes sense. When I watched that lap and I thought, oh, this is actually really decent. But it wasn't much different to your previous best. It's because you just lost a bunch of time here in turn 1. That's all. So you went, you lost how much? Yeah, like 4 tenths by the exit of turn 1. Whereas on the other lap we looked at, you were basically level on the exit of turn 1. So that's fine. So this is, if we're going to be looking at a lap as a reference before we do next week, this is the one. Just ignore turn 1 basically.
Yeah.
But the traits are still.
Effectively, I can fix the corners. I'll be fine.
Yeah, but they are. The thing is, though, it's like these are things that we can say. Do this differently. Change this thing. I mean, and there's other things too. We haven't got to the bus stop, but like on this lap, for example, we lost quite a lot of time through the bus stop. There's another chunk. What are we? 1.2. So there's like another half a second or so in the bus stop. Assuming you did it as well as possible on this lap, which I don't know yet. We haven't really looked at bus stop this time, but just in fact, whilst we're here, just whilst I'm looking, I just want to see this. I'm just going to assume this is how you do it every lap, and it might not be. But if we take this as a good bus stop, this is the big difference. I'm doing a big brake, so you are braking slightly earlier than me, but then you're trailing the brakes in a bit more. That's interesting. And then you're fully off the brakes here. Okay, right. So the difference, I'm braking a little bit later. Obviously, that's a small time gain. But then I'm coming off the brakes completely and hitting them again. And that hitting them for a second time here, up to 40%, which is pretty significant when you're travelling at 211k. That second hit of the brakes is what's helping me get the car rotated through the middle phase. Whereas you're doing a more gradual deceleration, and the car doesn't have that kind of forced moment of like, now kind of tweak it to the inside. And so although you're going more slowly, your speed's actually slower all the way in. You'd think, okay, well, that should let the car turn. You don't have the weight transfer. I've got this sudden moment of weight transfer about here, which just gets the nose tucked in better. That's what's letting me go faster and still get out of the corner on the line I want. Whereas because you're not doing that second, like, forced brake, like you're not forcing the car from this point here down to here, so basically like kind of the entry phase of the corner up to the middle part, you're letting the car, you're waiting for the car to do a thing. Like you're waiting for the car to rotate, and if it doesn't, we're like, okay, it didn't. Whereas I'm just subconsciously forcing the car to do that extra little bit of rotation with a little tap of the. I didn't even know I was doing that. I didn't even know I was doing it, but that's why I like looking at the data, because I'm not thinking about it when I'm doing it, but now looking back at it, I know why. That's because I need it to keep the speed up, but I need the attitude of the car to change to a slightly more pointed in version. So there we go. So that's another thing we can do. We can apply a little bit of a brake dab when we're going through the bus stop. Again, you might screw it up loads to begin with because it's not what you naturally have been doing, and it's not what you have practiced up to this point. But if we now know we need to aim for that, there is lap time there, clearly. Like that's this. What's this difference with the throttle? So yeah, okay, so I'm also having a big lift. When I see it didn't do what I wanted it to, I got on the gas, taking the mickey a little bit here, very early. Yep. So my initial getting back on the throttle is 3,900 metres, and yours is... So you're like 30 metres later when you first try and get back on. But I realised it was a bit too early, had a secondary lift. Again, that's weight transfer. That's just to get the weight back on the nose, and then went again. But yeah, so there's things we can do in the bus stop to manipulate the car at high speed, and we'll practice that next time. So a couple of things for next time. We will be carrying more speed up to the apex in the hairpins, but still getting it rotated at a nice low minimum speed. And we'll find some time in the bus stop. But yeah, sorry, I know I've overrun a bit there, but I just don't want to miss a thing.
I'm fine with the overrunning. I just don't want to take the piss out of you.
No, not at all. Not at all. So much of these sessions is taken up with, you've got to do some driving whilst I'm watching. And I hate... I don't... The value bit is the bit where we discuss it afterwards. But I just have to see you do it in the first place. But I'd rather really focus in on talking about what we're going to change and figuring out why we need to change a thing, than half-heartedly do it, and then it's a week, and then I forget, and then you haven't had a chance to practice some of this stuff in the week. So,
yes.
So I'll look at your data again before. If you do any more laps this week, I'll keep checking back at your data and look and see if I see any change in this. But when are we next on? I've got it all in my calendar. Let me just bring it up.
So if you have
same
to
time
keep
next
look,
week?
I'll just IM you if I do some practice. I probably will.
Yeah, that's fine. So this is today. So yeah, it's next week, same time, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, Saturday 24th. And then let me just check one more thing. Right, so you have a session Saturday 2nd of March, 6 till 7 p.m. No, 4 till 5 p.m.
Okay.
I believe that is during the first Formula One race of the year because it's now on a Saturday, not a Sunday.
Right. Okay.
I only just found this out recently. I had no idea they were going to be on Saturdays. I'm fine. I've got basically loads of coaching sessions that day. I don't think I'm going to be able to rearrange them all in a way that means I will get to see the Grand Prix. I wanted to give each of the people who I've got booked in the chance to tell me if they'd rather watch the Formula One because we can still change it. I've got lots of time later in the evening that night.
So
or
I don't care
earlier
one
in the
way
day.
or the other. If it helps you, move it. If it doesn't, then don't worry about it. But I don't really watch F1.
Okay, well if you don't watch, then I'm not going to move it for your sake. So
But if everyone else clears it out and you want to watch it, then I'm happy to do it later. I won't go to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning, so there's no skin off my nose.
Okay, I tell you what. For them, why haven't I got that earlier in the day? I don't know why I haven't booked that for. Would you be okay provisionally if I change that to the same time as we're doing the other 2 sessions?
Yeah.
If the other people decide actually they definitely want to keep those sessions they've got in, then it doesn't make any difference. If you'd rather go back to 4 till 5, then I can just change that back. We've got a couple of weeks till then anyway. But I'm seeing each of the people in this list, you yourself included, today. So I thought this was a good chance to ask people. So I'll just provisionally put you at 10 a.m. So it's just exactly the same as the other 2.
Okay.
But if the other people don't want to change, then I'll just put you back and I'll tell you.
Okay.
If this is a better time for you anyway.
It doesn't matter hugely, so if you want to watch the F1 and fit it in, then do your best.
Okay. I will. I'll see what's possible, but it might not be. But I'll see what's possible. Cool. Okay. Thank you very much, man. I enjoyed that.
That's all right.
And,
yeah, me too.
And I'm looking forward to digging into it in more detail next time.
Well, hopefully, I'll correct a few of those things, and life will be a bit easier.
Yeah, I mean,
But
the
yes,
closer you get to the ideal, then the more we'll zoom in more and more and more on perfecting things rather than fundamentally changing an approach. But hopefully that all made sense at least.
Yeah, it did. Awesome.
Thanks,
right,
man.
I'll
Well,
let
have
you
a
grab
lovely
yourself
day.
a coffee. Thank
Yeah, I'm
you,
gonna
and
go do
you.
that.
Hope the rest of your sessions go well.
Yep, thank you, man. And I'll put this up. I'll record. I'll put up the recording and let you know the link.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. See you later.
See you later.